في كتابه الكريم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال الله تعالى واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. وقال الله اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم كل نفس ذائقة الموت وإنما توفون أجوركم يوم القيامة فمن زحزح عن النار وأدخل الجنة فقد فاز وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al Imran, every soul shall taste death, and you will only receive your full reward on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment. Whoever is spared from the fire and is admitted into the Jannah will have triumph. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا, the life of this world is no more than the delusion. Inshallah, today I want to reflect on the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing this life as a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our remembrance of death. In a hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, live in this world as if you are a stranger or a traveler passing through. Because in our understanding of this, death is not the end to this life or the next, but rather it's a transition between this temporary life to the next. We take death not as a sad thing, but rather something of preparation, something of reminder. And so, قال الله تعالى وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we shall certainly test you with a touch of fear and famine and loss of property, life and crops, and give good news or glad tidings to those who have patience or those who patiently endure. In this hardship, in this time where we are in a world where there's so much genocide, war, death, disease, we have to turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this patience, with salawat, knowing that His mercy can then save us. وقال الله تعالى إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت إن الله عليم خبير. At the end of Surah Al-Luqman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed Allah alone has the knowledge of the hour. He sends down the rain and knows what is in the wombs. No soul knows what it will earn for tomorrow, and no soul knows in what land it will die. Surely Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. Our response to seeing the death of those around us and those who are close and far should be one of patience, steadfastness, and seeking knowledge. In Islam, we're urged to understand and reflect and ponder upon death. Death is one of the tests from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, both to those who die around us and to ourselves. And it's one of the ways that we prepare ourselves spiritually in this life and in the hereafter. وقال الله تعالى الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after the previous verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, those who are patient, when faced with a disaster or calamity, say, surely to Allah we belong and to Him we will all return. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. They are the ones who will receive Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings and mercy, and it is they who are righteously guided. And to reiterate, death is not seen in Islam as the end. It's not something to dread, but rather it's seen as a transition from the dunya to al-akhirah. Rasulullah ﷺ taught us that those who pass away continue in the barzakh, so in a different reality. So they're not in the dunya, but they are still alive and aware of those around them, such as the parents to their child or those who do sadaqat on them. And so, قال الله تعالى الله يتوفى الأنفس حين موتها والتي لم تمت في منامها فيمسك التي قضى عليها الموت ويرسل الأخرى إلى أجل مسمى إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Zumar, it is Allah who calls back the souls of the people upon their death, as well as the souls of the living during their sleep. Then He keeps those for whom He has ordained death, and so those pass away, and releases the others until their appointed time. And so when they wake up, their soul comes back to them. Surely in this are signs for people who reflect. And so this is something to keep in mind, both with the sake of patience, but reflection of death, remembering that we will all die at some point, and remembering that all of these desires and delusions around are just temporary, they're not going to last. And so Rasulullah ﷺ said, increase in remembrance of the destroyer of pleasures, death. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the strength to face the trials of life and death with deen and perseverance. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما أمر والصلاة والسلام على خير البشر نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وسلم. So for the second part of the khutbah, the reason why I chose this topic is very personal. The past few days, someone very close to me passed away from suicide. And so in his death, people were saying things in the janazah and commenting on it. And so I wanted to talk about this for a little bit in terms of the topic of death and mental health in this sensitive topic. قال الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل إلا أن تكونوا تجارة عن تراض منكم ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ali Imran, O believers, do not devour one another's wealth illegally, but rather trade by mutual consent, and do not kill each other or yourselves. Surely Allah is ever merciful to you. So, this ayah mentions the prohibition of killing others and yourself, and mentions the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But one thing to keep in mind, those who are judged in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who have clarity, those who are mentally sound, those who are all there. And so there was another example of a woman 3 years ago in the UK who ended up doing the same after domestic abuse. And so Rasulullah ﷺ says in that hadith that the pen, al-qalam, is lifted on the record of 3 people: a child until they reach puberty, a person who is sleeping until they are awakened or unaware, and a person who is mentally disturbed until they gain their clarity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone knows the state of the minds of these believers who suffer, in this case, with the depression and stress and anxiety. And so, it is not our place to pass judgment upon anyone in that situation, because we cannot read the hearts of the people, but rather it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's place, and it is our place to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness and mercy upon them. And so, another thing to bear in mind is that Rasulullah ﷺ said, the best among you are those who are the best to their families. And in this case as well, those in their community, those who serve, and those who take care and have the compassion with those around them. And so our understanding of this topic of suicide and things like that, even though it's not often talked about, must be seen with some form of compassion Because just like physical pain, psychological pain and abuse also exists. And so, in that hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ mentions the pen being lifted for these people, we must reflect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's infinite mercy, as the end of the ayah mentions, and remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who understands the condition of His servants. And so as a community, our obligation is to offer support, understanding, and practical help for those facing these struggles, and helping them to seek help. Often in the cultural tradition, it's to go to the masjid if you are not feeling mentally well, and that's important. But in tawakkul ala Allah, in having the trust and mutma'in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you to cure these, it's also important sometimes to seek help alongside the deen. So not abandoning the deen and seeking medication or therapy, but including them both and getting that community support from your brothers and sisters. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide us all with the mental stability, the healing for those in the community, and forgiveness for all Muslims who have passed away, and for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon all of us. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم يا رب انصر المسلمين والمسلمات في كل مكان اللهم يا رب اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا